Today's Evening First Alert Weather Show is brought to you by Bresky Siding.
And good Monday evening, Mid-Michigan. Chief Meteorologist Chris Eastlick with your Monday forecast update. Obviously a busy day across Mid-Michigan and probably a day that has been, I would say, a little bit hit or miss, depending on how well you're impacted by some of the weather conditions today. Some probably just felt a cold January day. Others probably experienced anything from whiteout conditions to maybe a power outage or perhaps some slippery roads early this morning. And that was one of the reasons that we felt like the first alert weather day was necessary for today. Some of the conditions on their own, if we just had cold wind chills today, if we just had maybe 1 to 2 inches of snow in some areas this morning, I'm sure there's a few locations that got more, but a lot of these conditions on their own wouldn't normally lead to that. But just the fact that we had all of them combined, and especially some of the blowing snow and some of the whiteout conditions that people had reported to me throughout the day, felt like that was the right call, and certainly seems like that followed through. And I know most schools had the day off today, but there were a few that were scheduled to be in session on the holiday, and even some of those schools ended up calling off anyway, which probably wasn't a bad decision. But here's a look at some of the wind chills that we have tonight. We've got a lot to cover this evening. We've got cold wind chills. We have the potential for a little bit more snow on Wednesday morning, which could slow down the commute once again. And then also the possibility of maybe another alert day later this week on Friday for some wind chills that might even be colder than what we expect tonight. So the coldest reading we have so far is Houghton Lake at 14 below. MBS is at 10 below. Bay City at 7 below. Saginaw at 9 below. And Flint's at 9 below too. And we're going to keep this alert day going right through the morning tomorrow. Probably able to cut it off by our noon show, or the noon show will be the last one, just because we expect wind chills to improve through the day, but still expecting, even though tonight the snow has largely come to an end for a lot of folks, still some areas of blowing snow, still some areas of potentially reduced visibility. I think some cold wind chills that will primarily be within about 5 to 15 degrees below zero. I think that is the range that is most likely with some of those wind chills tonight. Occasionally you'll get a place that goes outside of that. I think especially to the north and west, places like Houghton Lake, for instance. I do think you can occasionally drop down to maybe as much as 20 degrees below zero, but it doesn't seem quite as consistent at that range. 5 to 15 below zero is usually also not enough for the Weather Service to do a cold weather advisory. I think one of the reasons they have just kept this under a winter weather advisory is, like, we've been talking about with this alert day, is you just have a lot of things combined. You have kind of a mixture of winter mess. We'll put it that way. And all those things combined together have just led to a pretty nasty day. So here's a look at the radar tonight. There's not a ton of snow at this point. We've got a few spots here and there. Roscommon County, Ogama County still seeing some light snow. Also getting some light snow in the Flint area right along I-69 and southward. It seems like we've got a few streamers coming from the west side of the state. And if we look over at the visibility map, this has been fluctuating pretty much since I got in the office today. More areas than not seeing a perfect 10. But we're starting to see areas like Houghton Lake and West Branch down to about 3 or 4 miles again. And we've got Flint down to around 3 miles as well. But even when it wasn't snowing in some of these areas this afternoon, we still had visibilities dropping, and a lot of that was because the wind was just blowing that fluffy snow around so much that you were getting just these clouds of snow that were spreading everywhere. You had the drifting into the roads, and it just wasn't a great mix. And so I think that's still possible tonight, maybe not as much as earlier today, but still think it's going to be a factor as we head through the overnight hours, especially in open field areas. And we're still seeing some wind gusts that are occasionally between about 20 and 30 miles per hour. Not quite the peak of what we saw this afternoon, but something to just look out for nonetheless as we go through tonight. So your feels like temperatures as we head through the overnight hours, right around midnight, pretty much the same as where we are now. I think most of us are probably dropping into that 10 below to 15 below range. And if you look towards tomorrow morning, again, most of us were within about 5 to 15 below zero. Port Hope and Houghton Lake dropping just a little bit further as we head through the day, about the same range early in the morning. We'll fast forward to the afternoon, and I think we at least start getting closer to zero, but we're not quite there just yet. And then it's probably not until later in the evening. We actually get a little bit warmer with the wind chill going into Tuesday night. And then Wednesday morning especially, even as snow starts to move back into the picture Wednesday morning, which we'll go over in a second. The fact that we see temperatures climbing back towards about the upper single digits to low teens, above zero. So Wednesday morning, not quite as bad as what we expect tomorrow. And then later this week, we'll have our eyes on Friday morning, but we'll talk about that after we get through Wednesday. So let's just take a look. Let's see here. Sonny says, when I worked at GM as an apprentice in '96, it was a negative 60 wind chill, and I had to work outside on third shift on the roof. Absolutely brutal. I can imagine. That's pretty crazy to hear minus 60 here in Michigan. You know, that's a number that you wouldn't be surprised to hear in a place like Minnesota or Wisconsin, who doesn't have the insulation of the Great Lakes around them. But you know, if that was back in '96, you know, it could have had a cold winter. Great Lakes could have been shut down. And, you know, even though that's not common, you know, we have extreme scenarios too. So interesting story, Sonny. Thanks for sharing that. Good evening, Ethan. Good to see you, buddy. Robert, any update on the solar flare from last night? We do have some Northern Lights photos, Robert. I will show some of those off in a minute. So if you haven't looked outside tonight, if you want to brave the cold, the Northern Lights are out. Jen from Bay City, thanks for joining. And Holly, staying toasty under my heated blanket in Michigan. I'm sure you're not the only one using a heated blanket tonight. Max from Bay City, thanks to everybody for letting me know where you are. So let's get to the snow first. We'll go to the wind chills on Friday next. Then I'll show a few pictures off that I received today, both of the conditions that we had outside in the Northern Lights, and then we'll maybe wrap this thing up because we've got a 10 o'clock newscast to prepare for, and we'll get you moving. So later on tonight, we expect the snow to wind down even more than it is right now, and then going through Tuesday, you know, a couple flurries here and there, light snow shower. I don't think it's anything to write home about on Tuesday. Going into Tuesday night, though, that's when things get interesting again. We've got some snow showers getting set to move through the region. Those snow showers likely moving in for the Wednesday morning drive. So this is about 5 o'clock Wednesday morning. You'll notice that snow is falling into temps that are right around the upper teens to low 20s, which isn't quite as cold as we will be, you know, tomorrow morning. But it's still well below freezing, so it may have a chance to stick to the roads and slow things down again on Wednesday. We've got fairly widespread snow by 7 o'clock in the morning. We fast forward to 9. We've got snow that's still covering most of the area. But then it does start to wind down as we go into the early afternoon, and you'll notice temperatures start getting closer to freezing at that point too. Still below that mark largely, but one thing that I think works in our favor Wednesday afternoon is the fact that we get warmer. Road treatments are a little bit more effective and we can clear things out a bit more. I don't necessarily think we're done with snow after Wednesday morning, but do think it's a little more scattered the second half of the day, and then it will eventually kind of wind down Wednesday night into Thursday. Let me see if I can go a little bit more into Thursday here. Maybe a few isolated snow showers on Thursday, but nothing compared to Wednesday. So Wednesday's another day that we're keeping a close eye on. Let me see if I can give you a look at snowfall for Wednesday. Let me just change the variables here just so we don't pick up on any snow tonight. Not that there's a ton. But we'll go to Tuesday, we'll set the time at 8 o'clock p.m., and then we'll go to Wednesday and go through the day. We'll go 11:59 p.m. Wednesday night. We will save it, save our graphic here. You get a little behind the scenes. And this is kind of what we're looking at for Wednesday. So this seems like a 1 to 3 inch type snowfall once again. You know, I would probably say some of the numbers that are close to 3, like the 3.2 in Midland, might be a little high. But still, I don't think it's completely off the table. I think most are probably going to be in that 1 to 2 range. But I think 3 is a realistic top end if we want to go that far for the entire day on Wednesday. Let me back it up just to give us a sense through maybe about 8 o'clock. So, you know, by the time students are back at the bus stops and you've made that commute, by Wednesday morning, maybe about an inch or two on the ground in some locations. A little bit more by lunch. So this is about 1 to 2.5 inches, it seems like, by Wednesday early afternoon. And then we just chip away a little bit more into Wednesday night, and we get those totals just a little bit higher with some of the scattered snow showers on the back end. So Wednesday could be a little slower as well. No problem for the update, Hernando. How cold does it have to be to close school? So Sheila asked a really good question. Obviously, I don't make those decisions, but usually from the schools that I have talked to in the past, typically they follow the cold weather advisories. Once we start getting down into that 15 to 24 degrees below zero, that is the criteria for the Weather Service office in Detroit, which covers most of our area. The Weather Service office in Grand Rapids covers the west, and the Gaylord office covers the north. But most of our counties are under the Detroit office, and so they issue those advisories for 15 below and 24 below, and it has to be fairly consistent. If it hits, 24 below, but only for one observation time within that whole window, it's likely not going to lead to a cold weather advisory. But usually schools tend to follow those advisories, especially once we start getting closer to about 20 below. And further from that, but each district is different. So I don't want to speak for superintendents who are having to make that call. Do I think tomorrow is going to be a cold weather day on its own? Probably not. But again, that's ultimately up to the superintendents, because I think 5 to 15 degrees below zero typically falls below that threshold for a cold day. And despite how cold it will be tomorrow morning, and even despite how cold it is right now, where we've got wind chills that are, 5 to 10 degrees below zero and even closer to 15 in Houghton Lake, this isn't the first time we've had these wind chills so far this winter. So I think, again, tomorrow is probably, what is the combination of those conditions? But we'll see what tomorrow morning brings, and we'll leave those decisions up to those who are much smarter than me when it comes to managing a school district. So I would say if I had to make a call, you said, Chris, you have to make a call right now. Is school going to be in session tomorrow? I would lean towards yes, if it's only based on the wind chill. If there's still a lot of snow blowing around, if there's still icy roads, that could be a different story. But based on wind chill alone, I think most districts are probably going to be in session tomorrow. Now, while we're on the subject, here's a look at later this week. So I have added a first alert possible day towards the end of the week, just because we're still in that window where a lot of things can change. But I think at the very least on Friday, we could be looking at wind chills as an Arctic cold front comes through. That could bring some of the coldest air we've seen so far this season. I think it's possible that not only do we have wind chills that are similar to Tuesday, I think that's a little bit more certain that we're about as cold as we will be tomorrow morning. But I also think there's a bigger bottom that falls out on Friday, or the potential for that to happen. So I think there's a better chance that wind chills could maybe be below 20 degrees below zero on Friday. And it may not be just a morning thing where you get those cold temperatures in the morning, and then by the time you get to 9 o'clock, things improve. I think I put closings or delays down there, but I would assume that if we get wind chills that are 20 to 25 degrees below zero on Friday, and that's enough for our local schools to pull the trigger on a closure or a delay, I would say it's probably going to be more of a closure, just because it seems like it's going to last most of the day on Friday, however cold it ends up being. So that's something that, again, is not set in stone. We're still several days away from this, and you're trying to predict wind, direction and speed, 3 days out ahead of time. That's really tough to do. We acknowledge that. But I think there are enough signs with the amount of cold air that's coming in, even with, approximating some of the winds that we expect on Friday. I think it's possible that we could be looking at a scenario Friday morning that's colder than what we have now. So that's just something that I don't necessarily want you to say, hey, I'm going to make a decision right now. But I also think, especially for parents who, or in some of our northern counties, the first week back of school had 2 or 3 days in a row that their school was closed. And you're kind of maybe running out of options with childcare. You're trying to make decisions with that. And those options aren't always easy, trying to make up for a closure if you can't stay home. And you're running out of PTO or something like that, or you have nobody to stay with your students, and they can't go to the office with you. I just want to put that out there that Friday could be that day, so if you need some extra time, you have time to make that decision, or at the very least start talking about a plan just in case. But again, don't take this to the bank just yet. But I think it is the magnitude of wind chills we could expect on Friday could be to the point where we do get some closures. But we'll see what happens as we kind of get to that. So let's see what we've got for the comments. So that's a very good question. Circling back to Sheila. That's my limited knowledge on school closures with Colt. Michael, yeah, might have some plowing to do on Wednesday. Oakland University, Becky says, closed tomorrow. Raymond, I love watching money fall from the sky, so I'm guessing, Raymond, you might be someone who clears the driveways and some of the parking lots around the region, or just some of the roads in general. We are not hitting 50 this weekend. Here's a look at the extended for those interested before I show off some pictures. We've got temps on Friday in the single digits for actual temperatures. Saturday, pretty much the same story. And then really only getting up to the teens into Sunday and Monday. So that's kind of where things stand. Let me see what I can pull up with pictures here, not only from the snow, but also some of the northern lights that we've got tonight. I'll show a few pictures off. Feel free to post them. This is my Facebook page here. And Denise's comment here, if you can read that, is my favorite. Said, I'm not going outside to look tonight. I'll use my imagination. But this one from Bob in Millington. Some pink shades there. Let's see what we've got. Bay City State Park, courtesy of Lindsay. More of the variety of purple and green mixed in there. Barbara from Big Rapids, some faint color there. This is Claw Collin from Shannon. Some really deep shades of purple. Let's see, Linwood, that's a really nice one. That one from Vanessa in Linwood. Somebody asking about Linwood, not Linwood, closures. I haven't seen any come in just yet, but I haven't looked in a little bit, so I'll double check. Tina from Harbor Beach, one of my reliable reporters from Harbor Beach. Appreciate you, Tina. Katie Stefaniak from Linwood. Some purple shades out in Linwood. Really good colors in Linwood tonight. Caseville from Pam. And more from Bob there. John, thanks for looking for me. Responding to Lexi about St. Louis schools. Sounds like as of right now they are in session, but we'll see what happens in the morning. Diane is in for Matthew this week, so she will have all that information for you tomorrow morning if you need kind of a live look. Let me see if I can pull up some of the pictures from today. These were some drifting photos. This was from Kathy. This is in the thumb area. Check out that drifting that she has over on this side of your screen right here. She said if she didn't have her snow fence that this would really be moving across the property. And you can even see off in the distance there. I know it's a little tougher to see because Facebook doesn't allow me to pull the image up any bigger, I don't think. Yeah, okay, now I figured it out. But if you take a look off in the distance, you can kind of see how that snow is just blowing around, and the visibility in that part of your screen right there is really tough to see. So appreciate Kathy for sending that. Kathy, if you're on the stream, thank you. This was from Pauline. This one I thought was a really cool image. This one's, a little bit at an angle, but she said it was like you get this big cloud of snow blowing around. So I thought that one was pretty cool. And this one from Jessica. This is a view from Port Hope out across the big lake. That's a really awesome shot there. So thanks to Jessica for sending that one in. So you can't even really see out on Lake Huron. She says you can't even see the water at all. This one from Eric. This was in Caro, south of 24 and 46. You can see the snow coming off the fields. This one from Carrie. This one in Merrill. So this one outside of the thumb. You can see some pretty cool drifting patterns there. And then this is M52 headed towards Chesney. You can see that snow blowing across the road. So again, a really tough day, and one of the things that I thought was interesting is this one's from Standish. Is that this one I think is one of the cooler pictures that I've gotten because you can see the sun out. And so you were getting all these whiteout conditions when the sun was out, which again, not unheard of if you live in the thumb or kind of an open field area. This happens. Sometimes we call them like ground blizzards, but it was still pretty cool. Not fun to drive in, but still it's kind of crazy. And this one from out in the thumb as well. This one from Pigeon. Josh said it was pretty terrible there. So that's just a sampling of some of the conditions we've had today. Brooklyn, how cold is it going to be in the morning? Wind chills at least about 5 to 15 degrees below zero. Maybe even some that are a little bit colder than that, part of the time. So that's it. That's pretty much what I got on the stream tonight. I'll give you one last look at the snow for Wednesday here. For some of you who might be joining just for that. Expecting snow to move in pretty quickly Wednesday morning. Becomes pretty widespread through Wednesday. Likely continues to be that way through about lunchtime or so. And then just kind of tapers off to scattered snow showers the rest of the day. As far as an early look at how much snow on Wednesday, I think we're looking at probably about 1 to 3 inches of snow. This is through 5 o'clock in the evening. We might add a little bit more after that, but I think this is a pretty good representation of what we expect. Yeah, Brooklyn, I don't think SVSU is closing tomorrow, but we'll see what happens. Again, it's all up to the decision makers at each place. I think if there is a potential for closures, I think Friday might be the better day compared to Tuesday. But Brooklyn, hope you're doing well. If you're the Brooklyn, I think you are. You are a student of mine. Really bright future. Great student. So Brooklyn, if that's you, good to see you on the chat. And just checking the comments to see if anybody else has anything. But other than that, we'll end the stream here pretty soon, just so I can get to work on our 10 o'clock newscasts. Let me just see if I can give you kind of a sampling maybe of... Okay, Brooklyn, nice to see you. Good to hear from you. Let me just take a sampling of Friday's wind chills really quick, just while everybody's here on the stream. This is the European model, which goes out a little bit farther. And so here's a look at some of those projections Friday morning. Now, the key word in all of that is projection. There's a lot of time to go, and sometimes these models tend to correct themselves. But this is not just the European model showing this, the GFS model, which is the American model, was showing this as well. And we also had, I think the Canadian or the German model was showing this. So it's not like I'm just picking the worst one and showing it to you, but multiple models have been showing this. So we'll see what happens. But still, again, a couple of days away. Sometimes the wind doesn't come in quite as strong, and then if the wind isn't quite as strong as what it's being projected today, then of course these will come down again. But I think, again, that if even in the absence of that, I think at the very least Friday will be similar to what we see tomorrow morning. So that's pretty much all I got, and I will end the stream there. I'll take a look at some of the comments and see if anyone has anything after the stream. And if not, we will touch base again tomorrow at 9 o'clock once again. Good to see all of you, and have a wonderful night. And please stay safe tonight, whether it's just staying warm or out on the roads. We'll see you tomorrow.